All right, happy to be here at Soccer House for the last iterations of this old building, but leading into sort of what is a new era in some ways for the U.S. national team. Missed the World Cup. We're back. 2026 is coming. We're chatting with Gregg Berhalter. How's it going, Greg?
It's going well. Thank you.
So, yeah, you got some travel coming, and that's part of this job. It's part and parcel. Going to Europe, doing some scouting, meeting with players. I'm less interested in where you're going now, unless it's sort of on your list. I'm curious, when the staff gets together and you guys have these players, you have these clubs, you have these places you need to go, where are you saying, and I know you're a foodie, where are you saying that's my spot? Like, nobody's taking this destination away from me. Where do you want to go in Europe?
It's going to be Luca de la Torre in Celta Vigo,
Ooh.
getting San Sebastian. Unfortunately, I haven't been up there yet, but that's definitely on the bucket list.
I see when I watched the Alexi interview, I thought that the most engaged you were that entire time was talking about bone marrow pasta. So what's man. I'm sure you've done research. Yeah. I'm sure you have some San Sebastian stops you're thinking about. What would you be having?
It's like the culinary capital of Spain. So there's a lot of seafood there. They also have the mountains where they have, they raise pigs and they raise lamb and stuff. So it's I can't wait, man.
I can see the foodie tones here. Are you a cook too, or are you just a consumer?
No, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So here's a question for you.
Okay.
This is going to be a little bit of a thought exercise.
Okay.
It's November 20th of this year, 2022.
Yep.
Tomorrow is Wales.
Yep.
All this prep, all this work has come down to this huge moment.
Yeah.
But all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. You feel prepared. The players know the game plan. They're recovering. They're getting their minds right. You have a night before, and this is in theory. You probably have work to do, but in theory, you have a free night. Yeah. And you have an all expenses meal. You can invite whoever you want. You get 3 guests. You choose the meal. You choose the wine pairing. You choose it all. Yeah. Who's coming? Yeah. What are you eating? Yeah. And what's the conversation the night before that game?
So what I'd say is that when we're in tournament mode, I don't even make time for anything private like that. To me, it's just about focus. It's just about go time, So I would say after the World Cup, I would start thinking about that. But, night before a game, the focus is all on the game, all on the options, all on the alternatives and what we see.
There's no stress for you then. Let's say it's after the World Cup.
Yeah.
I want to know who you'd invite.
Yeah.
I want to know who you'd serve.
Yeah. No, I think... And I'd like to be with close friends, So that's the thing. It's not. It wouldn't be about inviting people I don't know, To me, it'd be about inviting my close friends and just sitting down and having a nice meal, a couple glasses of wine, maybe a cocktail beforehand.
Can I ask you who those friends might be? Are they people outside the soccer world? Are they in the soccer
world?
Yeah,
no, I think it's a mix. Obviously, really close with all the coaching staff that I've worked with before. Wolfie and Nico and the guys in the staff now. So, but, friends from growing up, friends from around.
Is there a Gregg Berhalter coaching tree that's developing? Or do you, you got Lucci, he's going to go to San Jose after this. You mentioned Wolf, Nico. 2/3 of Texas is coming out of the USMNT staff here.
No, I think it's so happy for those guys. I think they've been doing a great job, in particular, Josh after the first year, regrouping, getting more talent in there, believing in himself, believing in his ideas, which are really important because there's times when you're tested and, are you going to abandon what you do or are you going to go all in? And Josh has clearly done that, and that's paying off. And Nico, in his first year, is doing a great job with Dallas. I really like the way they play. I really like how the players, what they've been doing.
I'm going to go back to the night before the World Cup because it's all business.
Yeah.
We're not even introducing the idea of relaxation.
No, having a nice dinner.
You're grinding. So what is that night like? You've been there as a player. This will be your first time as a manager. Yeah. But what is that night like? What was it like in Korea for you?
I think the important thing is to understand is that, in the end, it's just another game, right? It is.
Is it possible to have that
for sure. You just stay in the present. You do your work. You do the work like you've been doing for – I don't know how many games we coach with the national team, but you do your work and you let that speak for itself and you prepare in the way you have been preparing. And I think, that's the message you want to communicate to the players also is you guys played in a lot of games. You guys are really good players. We know what we're doing. We know the game plan. Now it's just about going out and executing.
When you think about those friends and your family, I feel like I know you in some ways as a soccer coach, less so as a person. Yeah. How would your family, those friends, how would your kids describe you?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but I think, there's always been almost two sides to me. The side where on the field, very competitive, very, very driven, very focused, and off the field, caring, relaxed. I like to be around people. I like to be around my friends. I like to host my friends. I like to have a good time. So, I like music.
Yeah, what do you listen to right now?
Yeah.
What's going to be on the night before playlist, if there is one?
I like everything. I mean, I know everybody says that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone.
But you have favorites. You have one that you gravitate toward. On the ride here, what were you listening to?
Yeah, I was talking on the phone. I was got call.
Businessman,
exactly.
work.
No, but I like electronic a lot. Yeah, I like hip hop. I like reggae. I like rock. Everything.
What's the last concert you went to?
Oh my gosh, the last concert I went to was Zach Brown Band.
Okay.
And I had no idea about him, but I brushed up a week before.
There for a good time.
I listened to, and it was a really good concert, really strong band, and it was a great concert.
The vibes are good.
Yeah, totally.
So you mentioned sort of that player side of you, and we had DeMarcus Beasley on a watch along to do the U.S.-Mexico game during qualifying, and I said to him, okay, so we see Gregg as a coach, but you saw Gregg as a player. You felt Gregg as a player, and he said, yeah, I felt Gregg as a player. Like, so the first time I was in camp, Gregg hacked me down and pulled me up and said, get up. Yeah. What were you like as a player?
I think that, competitive, wanted to win, was driven, I think really focused on having a long career, doing everything I needed to stay fit, to stay focused.
Do you feel like a trailblazer in any way? I mean, looking back, leaving as a junior out of North Carolina in a time where, not everybody was doing that, and certainly not everybody was make a long-term career, and then captain a team in Europe. I mean, did you feel at the time like you were taking a big chance, or was it sort of?
It was just something. It felt natural to me. Something I really wanted to do. And I remember, I met my wife actually the first week at North Carolina. She played soccer there also, and we were hanging out, and she said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to Europe. I'm gonna be a pro in Europe. And she's like, what? It was unheard of. But for some reason, I was just focused on it, and that was something where a lot of energy that extra energy I spent training. Even when the team was done, I would be still training and doing stuff, and really focused on being the best I could be.
How'd you meet your wife?
Just
who introduced themselves first, I think is a good question.
It was funny because we were actually I was going to the track. It was preseason soccer, and I was with two guys from Long Island, Chris Lynn and Rob Murray. Both played soccer in North Carolina, and my wife and now Claudio's wife were running around the track, and they were finished, and we were about to go on, and they knew him from Long Island. Both of them are from Long Island, and they introduced us.
It's perfect. You got the perfect wingman in that.
Yeah,
in that case.
And that was it.
Hey guys.
Yeah, right there.
Who's that?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
who's that? Yeah. Introduce me.
Exactly.
Come on, guys, hook me up here.
Yeah.
The competitive side, I had this inkling based on watching you throw bounce passes and some of the technique you were talking about of like, hey, look, you got the bounce pass, you get it straight up here. I mean, no wasted motion, keep the ball high. I was like, this is a basketball player. This is a guy who considers himself potentially a baller. And then I was thinking, I know that MLS coaches have played pickup basketball regularly in the past. They used to see Ben Olsen like at the Carolina Challenge Cup out there outside the hotel. Are you a baller, like a certified baller? And have you been a part of those MLS pickup games?
From New Jersey, you have to play basketball, right?
Gotta.
Yeah, from
Blacktop, man.
Yeah, exactly. Going to high school in Newark, New Jersey, you had to play basketball. But I never played with Ben. I played with Chris Albright, and he's a handful. He's all over the place. He calls me Ginobili. But we would always play with the staff. So me, Wolfie, Pat Onstad, we'd play always 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 and have some great times. Really competitive games.
You strike me as a potential point forward type, like a Vlade Divac type.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the bounce passes.
Exactly.
I'm tricking myself. Like get in the post, catch good vision, understand the flow of the game.
Yep, right there.
All right. How about shooting? Can you shoot the ball?
I'm okay. I'm not Steph Curry for sure.
Let's go to the World Cup now. And look, you're in a unique place as the manager of this team. You're the first player who has World Cup experience to then be the manager. And I was thinking about it, and it kind of feels to me, if you think about sort of the timeline of U.S. soccer in, say, the last 30 years, that's a little bit of a full circle moment.
I think so.
90, you go to the World Cup, and all of a sudden that's sort of the first generation that could even do things like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that feel significant to you in any way?
Not really. I'm not the type to reflect on stuff like that. To me, it's just about, again, when this opportunity presented itself, just being really excited because, I have a lot of love for our country. I remember, great memories representing our country as a player. And I think the opportunity, with this player pool, with this group, and for U.S. Soccer to get the team back and try to do well at the World Cup is really important.
Does that perspective come in handy at all? I mean,
I think
back
it does.
to
Yeah,
02
no,
and
that
06
helps.
and
Yeah, it certainly helps when you're going through qualifying. So, you've been there before. You understand what it's like. You can share your experiences. You can, you know what to expect a little bit. And the World Cup is no different. I think that the games in the World Cup have a high intensity. It's about really small moments. It's very, like cagey type of games where teams are cautious. They don't want to let much up, and they're difficult games. And I think about the opening game for us against Wales is going to be a very difficult game. They're going to be very compact, very robust in their defending. They're going to be dangerous in the counterattack. It's going to be a really interesting game for us.
I think about that first game, and I think about 02 and 06 and sort of the compare and contrast, the emotional side and just the result side of beating Portugal and what that can launch you on to do. And then the emotional letdown of losing to the Czech Republic in the way that 06 team did. And then seeing obviously a much hyped team sort of, go out in the group stage and get labeled a certain way. I wonder how you think about legacies being made and sort of, as you said, the margins. Like it occurs to me that there's luck involved. 270 minutes it's nothing. You do all this work to get to this point, and then let's say somebody sticks an arm out on the goal line, and your whole fate changes, or a different result goes a different way, or a guy gets hurt in the lead up. Like when you think about the margins in that first game and how important it is just on the percentages to advancing out, how much energy, how much resources go into that versus England and Iran?
No, all the games are going to be important, right? Because it is possible. I know what you mean about odds, based on the first game, but it's possible. When you go back and look at the last World Cup, there are teams that didn't win their first game that went on to the next round, right? So you never want to rule anything out in soccer. And for us, it's, the most important thing is going to be how do we put in good performances in each of the games. And then if we do that, we feel like we'll be able to get to the next round. But if something happens that you can't control, and soccer is, there's a lot of variability in soccer, you just live with it. I mean, that's what soccer is.
Do you feel like Bruce did anything different between 02 and 06? Were the teams different? Were the personalities different? Was the culture different? Like what do you point to in sort of the compare and contrast with those two teams?
It's always interesting to watch, very similar groups go through two World Cup cycles. And, in the first 2002, we were very motivated to prove something. And the group, I think, had the right mix of older guys, really younger players that wanted to break out and almost had no fear. I think about DeMarcus and Landon and stuff like that. In 06, it was just different. It was like the group wasn't, I don't know, it was maybe we had more expectations laid upon us. Maybe it was just a different group. And not for the better. I think it was for the worse. I didn't see a group that was really hungry and brave. And there certainly wasn't those super young players in the group that are ready to break in. It was just a different mix of guys. And I think I don't think we maximized our potential because of that.
How do you then, in the lead up to this World Cup, and everybody's going to ask you about expectations, and I've basically heard you say over and over, two tournaments, we got to get the, you spread it out. But how do you, within the group, make sure that headspace is right for these guys? Do you have any concerns about that? Or is there...
I mean, there's a couple concerns. A couple concerns is that the group is so young that they don't know any better, and the first instinct is to say, okay, we're going to win the World Cup, right? And that's great, but there's a couple other elements that
people love to hear that.
Yeah,
they certainly don't like to hear that a coach say that you can't win the World Cup.
No, and we're Americans. I mean, fundamentally, we believe that we could do it, but to me, it's more about the how of it, right? And the how is then you start getting into the details of, okay, we got two tournaments here, right? If we want the right to play in this knockout thing, we have to get through this group phase thing, and that's going to be difficult. Two teams out of four. we have to finish in the top 2. Goal difference is going to come into play, and then specifically how we can approach these opponents that the guys understand. It's more about the how than the what.
When do you start introducing the how to them? Are you already introducing it to them?
We'll talk. I think we'll talk in specifics in September for sure. We'll start honing in on that, and then because we only have a week once we get to Qatar.
We'll get to some of that prep in just a second.
Yeah.
I want to dig into what this team has accomplished now before the World Cup muddies the waters.
Yeah.
Because if you looked at the legacy of that 2006 team before the World Cup, it's a completely different story. But that's the nature of the tournament. It's just this beast that takes over the narrative, so to speak. So looking at the work that you've done, that these players have done, what you've accomplished, before we go to Qatar, before that becomes everything, what should they be remembered for? What should they be proud of?
No, I think it's a group that's has been building, but the thing about international soccer is like you have to use these moments to really cement who you are as a team. Like when you're talking about the 2002 team, it's because of what we did in the World Cup, right? And that's so the moments like the World Cup is an opportunity for this group to really show who we are. And I think we've made progress. When you think about day one in 2019 against Panama, till now, we made a ton of progress. And now it's about finishing it off in a really positive way.
How do you communicate to guys about legacy in that sense when they're probably at a point in their lives where they're not? That sort of seems ephemeral. That seems like something that old people talk about. Like, hey, we're just going to this tournament to have fun. Do you introduce the idea of creating and making legacy, or what's at stake for them?
We've talked all the time about we're just a dot on the timeline of U.S. soccer, where we represent this time period, and what do we want people to think about when they think about our team? And that's we're very proud to represent our country, and we understand that we can impact things that come after us. So it is conversations that we have. But I think to do that, you need to really stay in the present. You really need to stay focused on each day.
So from 2019 till now, a lot of water under the bridge, some changes, shifting player pool. You've tried a ton of guys. Who do you think, like when you look at player and person, because that's a big part of it with these young guys, who do you look at and say, wow, the growth there is like huge, just incredible. You're a completely different player and person now than you were when we first started working with you. Who stands out in that sense to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I think some of the younger guys, like in 2019, weren't even eligible for us, right? They were just, conversations.
Yeah.
And then now they're key players on the team. So that's been a massive transformation. Some of the older guys, when you think about guys like Walker Zimmerman and Aaron Long, like they were pretty much the same guys from day one. Like they were all, a little bit more experienced, good leaders in the group, great for team spirit, played their roles really well. So those are guys that I think, haven't changed much, but what they bought initially was very good. They're always part of this nucleus. It's a good question. I need to give some more thought.
Yeah, you got too many guys to sort through there.
Exactly.
I mean, there's how many of them you could choose?
Yeah.
I mean, given the age profile of the team, the progress they've made just in their careers.
Yeah, exactly.
How about we hit Brenden Aaronson and Tyler just real quick at Leeds, because they're sort of on the forefront.
Yeah.
Brenden is one that, going from sort of becoming a pro really, and now playing in these huge high leverage games and having a big role and having a price tag and having the pressure of playing in the Premier League for an American manager.
Yep.
And then Tyler, I thought, especially against Chelsea, Brighton this last season wasn't the shining light that Chelsea was, but is showing sort of a potential to be a bigger piece than maybe Leipzig saw him as. Both those guys are still so young too. It has to be incredible to watch them and be a part of their progress.
Yeah, it is. It's been fun. With Brenden, I remember first hearing about him. Ernie worked with him in Philadelphia, and just, them saying, he's really skinny, he needs to put on weight, he's not ready. I remember we sent someone to go watch Philly's training and watch him, back in 2019. And our first experience with him, I think, was in 2020. And just to see how he's grown since then and the career he's had. And he's one of those guys also that's so focused on what he wants to accomplish and so focused on maximizing all his potential that it's great to see. And then the start to his Premier League debut with, should have been a goal.
Yeah,
right.
We all got beef with the
exactly. And then scoring against Chelsea and just the way he plays, the relentlessness of how he presses and keeps going, and it's been fun to see.
Will we ever see Gregg Berhalter celebrate, maybe in a World Cup, the way Jesse celebrated that goal? I don't know if you saw that celebration. It was a half-field sprint. It was a leap. There was some Frank Klopas CCL-esque thrusting going on, fist bumps. I mean, it was.
I love it.
It was a lot.
I tell you, there's a lot of emotion involved in the game, and when you the beauty about soccer is when you're able to accomplish things like that, right? Where you can beat the Champions League winner the year before, this big club, the first time in how many years, and that's really fun. And it's great to see that emotion come out.
When did you know with this group, and I know culture matters to you, leadership, when did you know you had like buy-in from them as a group into the culture, into the tactics, and what you guys were trying to accomplish? The obvious answer seems to me to sort of be like that Nations League game where it was like, okay, well, we came out and played our style, punched Mexico in the mouth. But was there a behind the scenes moment? Was there a moment that people didn't see where you thought, all right, we've got traction here, we've got belief, this is sort of a seminal moment to push on from?
It's a good question. I think it's a process, right, of building this foundation, and you always want to be moving forward with the group. And I remember, and I talked about this before, where there was a time where I felt we were losing buy-in, and that was when we lost to Mexico 3-0 in New York. And, guys were questioning things, and personally they were getting criticism. So, it's related back to the team, and it was a difficult moment. It really was. And it was good. Like they always say about soccer, it's great when you have the next game coming up. Like coaches love 3 games in a week because you get the next game really quickly. And we played against Uruguay, and really gave them a ton of problems, both defensively and offensively. They had a really hard time getting the ball against a strong Uruguay team, and I think that helped like settle things. But I knew there was still work to do with the group to get that full belief, because there's one thing when when you get criticized from the outside, you get into protective mode, right? Individuals get into protective
mode. Easy to get
mode.
defensive.
Yeah, exactly. And when that's one thing, and then they're less inclined to be in it for the team objective. So that was something we had to work on. But the Nations League, I think, was a moment where guys thought it was possible. And that's really important. Like that hope is really, really important. And I think that game gave us hope that we can do it. And we played Mexico 4 times after that and haven't lost. And I think the guys now have this this feeling that we can do anything we want, and that's a good feeling, a good spot to be in.
You've been in a lot of locker rooms, player and coach. What are the barometers you look for in a culture? How much of it is built and intentional, and how much of it is just sort of a naturally occurring process as guys go through things together, come closer, personalities mesh, etc.? Like, how much can you control it? And when you look in that locker room, or you're talking to somebody, or you're seeing the team take the field, the performances on the training pitch, what are things that you look for? How do you like, okay, this is clicking right now?
It's a lot of, I think the first part is just selflessness. I think when you have a really good culture, the members on your team are selfless. They'll help other players. They're not, their first priority isn't themselves. And then I think you're a good point. But to me, it's just about, there is the shared experience side of it, which happens just by time elapsing, right? You're together, you're playing games together, you're going to grow, right? And then there's the intentionality that I think you need to be aware of creating moments to accelerate that. So it's like, okay, you're with the national team, you're only together X amount of times a year. You need to be intentional about how you accelerate that time together, and how you maximize that, and how you have people sharing experiences, sharing themselves, being vulnerable. having fun together.
What's an accelerator? I mean, I hear about the trivia and Matt Turner. Like that seems like just little things
it's everything. It's every moment that that you can create for the guys. Whether it's a meeting you have when you ask people to share what this game means to them, or whether it's a team dinner out, or whether it's golf outing, or there's a ton of stuff. But I think it is about being intentional, because if you don't, guys go in the rooms and they just hang out, or whether it's the way you set up the lounge in the hotel, that you bring people together. All these things are important.
How would your players say that you are different from 19 to now?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, as soon as I asked that question, I knew the answer I was going to get from you. So, didn't phrase that one part. How do you see yourself differently, if at all?
Yeah, so I think, it's like anything. You want to keep learning and keep progressing and getting better. So from an understanding of international soccer, I'm much more comfortable with what it should look like. That's definitely something that has improved. I think from a tactical standpoint, develop specifically defensively, I think leaps and bounds from when I was in Columbus. And I remember we did the amoeba shape at MLS Studios with you and Bobby Warsaw.
Oh.
Yeah.
It feels like a different lifetime,
right?
Yeah, it feels like a different
remember
lifetime.
The touch screen?
I remember that vividly, yeah.
So, grown since then, we press completely different, much more aggressive, and that's been a change of my mentality towards the game. So I think you're always trying to get better and improve.
What's the aha moment with the press? Because there have been iterations of it, but now it seems like we're at a point where you guys have just said, you know what? Yeah. We're going to be a little in your face with it. We're going to be we're going to be more aggressive than maybe we were at the beginning. When was the moment you said, okay, we just got to go for this?
It was, I think, the start of it was in January 20. Oh man, what happened with January 2020. That was the start of it. And then as we got that was a domestic-based camp against Costa Rica. And then as we got some of the European guys together, and something specific, some of our midfielders, when you think about Eunice and Weston and Tyler, got them playing together, you saw the power of it and what it could do to opponents and how it can unbalance opponents. So I think it was in 2020.
You don't have a ton of time with these guys left. You're going to go to Europe and you're going to scout and you're going to have 2 friendlies in there. And that is going to be really your last camp. We're sort of used to this idea of like a pre-World Cup camp where, potentially you have a month with these guys to even like trim down your roster and figure out where it's going to go. Right. But this might be your last real opportunity with them. How much is going into September? What do you want to accomplish from September?
Yeah, so the way we work is just continue to make progress. It's never, I don't think it's ever about a panic for us or ever about, okay, we need to get this much in now. It's just continue to layer on what we've been doing. And I think that's important thing. It puts the players at ease a little bit. There's not a ton of new things that are going to be thrown at them in September that they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we can't deal with this, or they lose confidence. Now's not the time for it. We've done the job in these last 3.5 years to prepare the guys, and now it's just about the finishing touches.
You mentioned in another interview that you were going to do goal setting with players in September. I'm curious what goal setting is within the national team and within your management.
Yeah, for what we want to accomplish in the World Cup.
What do those goals look like? Like what's a?
That's TBD. We didn't do it yet.
Yeah, well, fair. What could a goal be? What's a sample goal?
Well, win the World Cup. That could be a sample goal.
Okay, that's a big one. Is it so? It's basically outlining with clarity to players. What the expectations and our hope to give them that communication factor.
Yeah, what we want to do, and then again the how of it also, right? So not just what, the how.
How formalized are these? Are these conversations, or are these I'm thinking about? I have corporate goals. Other people in this room have corporate goals. All people understand this concept. They do it professionally, and maybe some people do it personally. I do as well. Right. Is it are they writing this down on a piece of paper? Are we signing?
Yeah, no, we'll write it down. I don't know if we're going to sign it, but we'll write it down for sure. I mean, you're much more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down.
1,000%.
And then you're even more likely to achieve your goals if you tell someone about it.
I guess these number 9s have been writing some things down. They've been, because we went from a point where the number 9's nobody's in form. Who's in form? Nobody. It's Jesus. And now it feels like everybody's informed. And I know you and your staff on Mondays sit down and meet and go through after watching all these games and
Yep.
share reports. What are you saying about the number 9s right now? And it has to be encouraging, at the very least, as a staff, to look at these performances and say, okay, well, this is a good trend.
Yeah, you want your players to be in form, right? And all you can do is hope that they're performing, and then have to make difficult decisions, right? You don't want to make difficult decisions the other way when no one's performing, right? And you're picking the best of the worst. You want to pick the best of the best. And when you see Haji scoring 2 goals, right, and Jordan, his team doing really well. He had an assist again this weekend. He scored 2 goals already. Josh Sargent has scored 3 in 2 games. Jesus is having a great year. And Rico, got on the field and started last game. We'd like to have him score a little bit more. But it's a good problem to have. And then for us, again, it's about the profile, the player attributes that we need in our game model to be successful. And we pick that person that fits that the most.
What things are you looking for when you watch a game as it pertains to that game model? I mean, what you said about John Brooks made a lot of sense to me in terms of like, okay, well, we need him to do this, but we don't have sort of that immediate data to see how he in this moment of his career deals with it. What are you looking for in particular outside of like the obvious? We want to see goals. You want to see a striker in form that way.
Yeah, so for forwards, it's understanding first of all, if you go on the defensive side, how to build pressure, the understanding about how to make play predictable, and then how to apply pressure on an opponent. And then, sometimes winning the ball, but really making it difficult for the center backs that they're playing against from a defensive standpoint. Offensively, it's those moments of when you have to come down to support build-up, right? But also how you're attacking space, how you're getting behind the back line. What's your movement like? How, are you recognizing? I don't know if you saw LA yesterday, LA Galaxy, but
watch the game. Yep.
A really interesting moment was when, Galaxy wins the ball, is about to win the ball, and you see Chicharito just take off running into space. Mm-hmm. Right, and you're like, he's making it from like 10 yards, and he just keeps running, and the ball goes to Ricky, and first time ball, and all of a sudden he's in on goal, right? Yeah. But it's that understanding of the game and what's going to happen in the game, and then how do I exploit space? I think that was a great example from Chicharito of how he did that. So that's what we're looking for in players also. Do they understand, how to attack space? And then in the penalty box, really important. We know in the World Cup it's going to be really tight in the penalty box. So how are these guys, how are they maneuvering inside the penalty box? How are they creating space for themselves inside an area where there's lack of space is really important.
How many guys do you think it will be in September camp that are that sort of true 9? Like I have 6 guys on a list here that I think could get a look or might feel like they deserve a look.
Yeah, so let me name the 6. See if I hope I can get them.
If I got it wrom, then I'm going to be ashamed.
If I can't get them all, I'm in trouble.
Well,
so
then I'm going to look dumb.
We have Jesus, Ricardo, Brenden, Pifak, Sargent, and Wright.
That's the 6.
Yeah.
Do you think are those guys going to be in September camp? Is that
all
many?
6 of them? Yeah.
I don't know. That's not too
many.
No,
we're not bringing 6 strikers. Okay. No chance.
All right.
We have 180 minutes of game time.
Fair.
Yeah.
Does the training side of that, is it too late for a Brandon Vasquez? Because the other guys you at least have experience with. Yeah. So and with the group and understand sort of intimately or more intimately what you want to do. Yeah. How do you decide who doesn't make that cut?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what we're working through right now. And listen, you know what's going to happen? There's going to be very difficult decisions that are made. There's going to be very disappointing guys. And the only thing I can say is that it's not the end. Yeah. I remember Steve Sampson called me and told me I was going to be an alternate for the 1998 team. And I thought my whole world was ending. And then I end up in 2 more World Cups. It's not the end. And in this trip in particular, it's about kind of who's there right now, because you don't have time. There's not a month where you can get a guy fit and play 3 games and get him in form. That's not what it's about. So there's the 2 sides of it. There's going to be very difficult decisions. People are going to be disappointed, and just for them to understand that, it's a decision based on this moment. It's not a decision that dictates who they are forever.
The book's not closed.
Yeah.
You've had it was 98, but it was also 06 to a certain degree, right? Yeah. With that difficult conversation. Yeah. And Corey Gibbs' injury brings you back. You are sort of, leadership is having clarity in conversations, tough conversations, but also empathy. You're going to have a lot of tough conversations here, and joyous ones as well. Knowing what you know, going through what you've gone through, how will you approach those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that the players understand it's coming from a place of caring. Like, I want everyone to make the team, and I care deeply for all these guys, and we've created relationships that will last a lifetime. But, we have to do what we feel is best for the team, and we may be wrong. Right, there's not saying that we know everything. Right? We may make some bad decisions. That happens. All we're doing is our best job based on the information we're given, related to how we want to play. And again, so I'll approach those conversations with extreme amount of empathy, because I've been there, and I can probably understand what they're going through.
What did you go through in '98 and '06, maybe to a lesser degree? I don't know, maybe it was to a greater degree because of the place in your career you were.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was a shock, that one, and I think it was difficult. But '98, it was more of I was back in the team. I played in January. I was doing well. I was struggling with injuries, and it was almost like I understood. It's hard to describe, but it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, where I was okay with it. But it was. I think the way, it wasn't like I was. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it was something that I was just like, okay, here we go again. It was one of those things where I should have been, I think in a way, maybe more upset than I was.
But in '06, it was a little different.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because, so we're playing with Copos and, captain of the team, and we're getting promoted and we're doing great. And it was tough, man. You're under pressure when you're trying to get promoted, and it's extreme amount of pressure. The whole city's behind you, and you're doing all that. And I never was one to shy away from going to the national team, no matter what my situation with the club is. I always wanted to play soccer. Yeah. When I found out, it was just, I think, disappointment, because this was, again, taking that group, moving that group into the spot of 2006 to be to really make a run and be good. But I guess what it comes down to, it's players also need to take responsibility, right? So if I gave Bruce any doubt, it's on me, right? Because coaches want to win. And I think, if I put any doubt in his mind that I was going to help him win, then that's my fault, but again, things work out the way they do, and you end up going to the World Cup. And
a couple weeks later, what was that? Did you see Bruce?
Oh my God, I was on vacation in Disney World with my family. I didn't even have my phone with me, and I remember
different era there.
Yeah. And they're trying to get in touch with the admin at the time. Pam Perkins was trying to call, and I think she ended up calling my wife or something. And I'm in full vacation mode at Disney.
You're wearing the goofy ears.
I was. I never forget. I was on the monorail going from Epcot to Space Mountain.
That's a formative memory. You don't forget when that moment comes.
Isn't that funny?
She just taps you on the shoulder. She says, "Hey,
And Pam's like, "Yeah, you got to get on the next flight out." I was like, "Pam, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I need to hear more about this whole project."
I've just recovered from the disappointment. I'm on vacation. I changed my mindset.
Yeah.
Let's talk World Cup in specifics too. I was looking back at, since 2002 essentially, and the break between games is different this year. You have just 3 days between games. It's 3 games in 8 days.
Yeah.
The travel is less of a consideration. We don't know exactly climate-wise. It's a little variable.
It'll be fine.
You feel the stadiums, the technology will be fine. But
and I think 10 o'clock games, it's going to be, high 70s maybe.
Okay.
Right.
From a recovery standpoint and a technology standpoint, sports science, what's going into this one that maybe hasn't gone into tournaments past?
Yeah, we're going to have a whole recovery lab. I mean, we're having everything.
What's in the lab?
Everything's in the lab.
Do some work in the laboratory. What's
No, I mean, the infrared beds, the float tanks, the hyperbaric, you name it, it's going to be in there. So there's going to be a lot going into it, and it's a result of our research over these last couple of years of what works well with the guys, what the guys prefer, And the good thing about it is 72 hours is enough time to recover for the next performance. So we're not in that zone where you have to worry about being recovered, but now we want to help accelerate the recovery with all these modalities that we're bringing in.
How do you think about the 26 man? It's this change that you'll be the first head coach basically to deal with having the additional 3 spots. Do you think all 26 players will play? How do you look at those final 3 spots that weren't there before and sort of assign them importance or roles or needs? How does that work?
I mean, ideally, we'd like to look at it where it gives us alternatives. I mean, when you think about this, you have 26 players and you have 5 subs. So you could start to work around the edges, if a guy's, working in platoons, if a guys aren't fit, you can get them out of the game, when you need to, and still have some subs left over. But ideally, I would want to feel comfortable with all 26 players, us trusting that they can perform at that level.
What's your scouting process look like? Obviously, you're in the middle of it. You said in September you'll start to communicate more specifics. But what does a scouting report have to have? Do you game theory these games? Do you sort of play them out as a staff of okay, well, we're going to come this. We think they'll respond this way. We respond with this. How deep do you go?
Yeah, I think the first thing is understanding, the formation of the opponent, right? How they're going to line up, and then how we can affect that. And then looking for strengths and weaknesses. We divide it up into phase of play: build up from goalie, build up from midfield, finishing attacks, and then high press, mid block, and low block defending. And just how can we be, and then offensive and defensive transition, and how can we, how can we have a plan for each of those phases? Basically, is how we look at it.
How do you communicate to players? And this is sort of the crux of teaching, is every individual absorbs, takes on information in a different way, and some things are more effective than others. You can't overload them, but you can't give them nothing. How do you sort of, this is for lack of a better phrase, onboard players in the right time frame process so that when they hit the field, they can actually use the information, but it doesn't burden them?
Yeah, I mean, onboarding is a tricky word because to me, that means a player is just coming into camp for the first time.
Okay, so onboarding is maybe the wrong word. It's not from scratch.
Right. Yeah.
But how do you sort of add these specifics and these details of that particular opponent and have them be usable in the moment?
Yeah. Well, because a lot of it is related to stuff we've done before. So the guys have a reference point. I think that's important. And our game, idea, is little tweaks. The guys understand the main idea of what we're trying to do. From a defensive standpoint, things may change slightly. We may say in this game, okay, instead of a winger releasing and another winger releasing, I'll pass center back to center back. Now, because the center backs are narrow, it's going to be winger forward press. And the guys, we'll show that on video. But I think to your point, we do have to take into account that players learn differently. Some you can tell them something. I could just say that to them. Boom, no problem. Some you need to show them the video of it. Hey, look, this is what it looks like. Others you need to train it. So fortunately, when we're in camp, we train it every time. We make sure we do at least some training based on that. We show video from training every day. And then we also have individual conversations with players. So we cover those 3 buckets.
You got the MLS guys in camp, and especially the ones that don't advance in the playoffs, they'll obviously need that environment. Yeah. But then it's the 13th and 14th of November when those guys get into Qatar, depending on schedules for European guys, and then you're playing a week later. Yeah. That's a pretty quick turnaround. What do those 7 days look like?
But it's a quick turnaround, but it's a long period based on what we've been doing. Yeah, so we've been operating under 2 days of training, right? So for us, again, it's just about how you frame it. And for us, it's, hey, we're looking at this. We have a long time to train because we have actually 6 days that we can get the guys on the field.
How much of a role does boredom play at the World Cup?
I don't think at this World Cup, I don't think it's going to play any role. If you could imagine that you have 6 days of training, and then you have games every single day. The guys are going to be watching games, watching the goal. I mean, it's going to be, and then it goes quickly also. We'll have a day where they see their families, and then it's 2 days of training. Then you go again and play. And I just don't think, I mean, if you think about the group stage being 8 days, I don't think that boredom's not going to come into play. No. Yeah. And we're going to, we're going to set up the hotel environment, that there's tons of stuff for them there. I don't think boredom's going to come into play.
What do players need that people don't think about to be comfortable and successful? You've been at World Cups like that. I mean, I heard
barbers.
Yeah, I heard barbers.
Barbers
a big one.
is a key one.
Yeah, you got to have your guy.
They like looking good before the game, and I don't blame them. So we have great barbers, guys from New York. They do a great job, and they'll come with the team.
What else is around? You got you talked about sort of gathering points, ways to keep culture strong. What are the things? What are the tricks of the trade?
We'll have ping pong. We'll have pool. We'll have a TV lounge where they can watch the games. We'll have a tournament board on the wall. We'll have family wall where they can see pictures of their family and stuff. We'll have a barista. Yeah, just things to make them feel comfortable, make them feel at home, and let them enjoy it. This is a World Cup, right? I mean, you want to go enjoy it. You want to put in a lot of hard work, but you want to enjoy what you're doing because, this is an event that only comes around every 4 years.
Do players read media? You like walking around the hotel and you see guys scrolling Twitter or like reading something. Do you read anything in between games?
No.
For sure not. Never.
No. Well, not never. I wouldn't say never. Early on in my job, I for sure did. And now it's more about, to me, it's just more about how do you stay in the present. And that's the way I do it, is just trying to be present to people, trying to be there. And I think when I think that can sidetrack you, that can help, that can lead to a loss of focus.
I want to stay in the here and the now, and I sort of breezed past this. We talked about Leeds and Aaronson and Adams, but there are sides of the pool right now that aren't as positive. And I think about Serginho Dest at Barcelona and what that situation is with Xavi, and he would be a guy that you would. If I'm looking at a US 11 right now in the World Cup, I would say, okay, Serginho Dest is in that 11.
Yeah.
Christian Pulisic has gone through a lot at Chelsea, and it seems to be in a weird moment. Was he going to stay? Was he going to go? Rumors surrounding him. I start with Dest. Do you have any concern about the situation that Serginho's in at Barcelona? I mean, we know playing time, being fit, being in form is
absolutely.
is crucial.
And I've talked to Serginho, and one thing I'd say about him is he's got a great mentality. He has a fighter's mentality, which you want him to have. And there's that side of it, and the other side of it is you want him to be realistic, and say, okay, am I gonna be able to get playing time here? And if he's not, it is important that we have our players in form playing. And so I spoke to him about it, and it's not easy, man. You're at a big club, you live in a great city, there's great talent and training every single day, and it's hard to give up sometimes. So. It's really hard. I'm almost uncomfortable having those conversations because this is the guy's career here.
It's his life, yeah.
Yeah, it's his life. And for me, it's like almost selfish to say, okay, you need to do this for this event in November, even though it's such a big event. But at the end of the day, players are going to make their decisions, and their decisions will impact what happens in November.
What about Christian's side of it right now? I mean, it seems like he's kind of been in a similar situation before.
Yeah.
And you've talked before about him being a warrior, but he is like he's the guy, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He's very important.
No, he's massive for us. I think I can't remember a game when he's played well when we didn't play well. He's like when he plays well, we play well as a group. So he's huge for us. And for me it's just his mentality I think is fantastic. It's not easy. Whenever you're at one of these top clubs, right, it's always about, the next player, right? These top clubs are always trying to bring the next guy in. And, Christian's been in that environment for years now, and he's been surviving. And there's something to be said for that.
Let's, before we let you go here, I know we've taken a lot of your time. I'm an MLS nerd. Domestic soccer is sort of my thing, will always be so. You have an insider's perspective, but now a 10,000-foot view of seeing sort of many sides of this. How has MLS changed since you left the crew, and where does MLS need to be better in preparing players for the national team environment and for European environments?
So what I've seen in MLS since I've left is just the youth on the field, right? Like when I was at the crew, it wasn't even close to that in terms of the amount of young players that are able to play, or if they were playing, they were sometimes foreigners. We had Milton, who came in at 19 and was starting. Arthur, who was very young. Will was like the one young American guy, right? And there wasn't really young players. And now when you look across the league, on any given day, you have young Americans on the field. And that's going to help, the development of our group when you have young players playing professionally. If I had to comment on a couple things that could improve at MLS, I think it would be the pressure on the ball and the compactness of the teams. The games are too wide open. Players are receiving the ball without pressure too often, too much time on the ball. And when you look at European games, it's just not like that. It's about, speed of decision making. And so I think, that's something we can improve on. And listen, there's a number of different reasons why there is that, right? We're playing sometimes in 110-degree weather. The travel's a lot, but I think they're and in playoffs, what happens when playoff games come? Everything gets tighter, But you'd like to see that consistently throughout the year, because you'll just be producing better players. When you export players, they'll be able to deal with the demands of the game at a higher level.
Last one for you. I don't think I'm out of line in saying that. And you love this job, you love what you do, but maybe you miss the day-to-day hands-on side of club coaching. You'll check a box here after this World Cup. That's like a pinnacle thing. That's something that people dream about. Managers dream about. Very few get to accomplish. You see Jesse. You see, guys going to Europe. Not guys. Maybe it's Guy and a couple others at this point. You were there before yourself. Yeah. When you think about your career post World Cup, whether it's 2026, whatever, is there a part of you that wants to go back to Europe and say, that's a challenge that I need to confront again? Like, do you think about that? Is that an aim for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of you, right? To think about how do I reach the highest level, right? So highest level of club soccer would be Champions League, right? How do you reach that level? But to be completely honest, the whole focus right now is only on what's ahead of me. What's ahead of us in November. There's no other thoughts in my mind.
All right, November, it's coming. Prep is happening. Good luck on your travels, and good luck the night before with your work, Gregg. We'll be watching with a lot of interest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.